Okay. Thank you so much to everyone who has joined us for today's session. We will have quite a few people still coming on. Um, so thank you again and welcome to our Ask Alumni Live Sourcing FEIT Internships. Today will be a live panel with one of our wonderful alumni, Chris, who has joined us today. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. We do have an allotted amount of time at the end to take on board all of your questions, but if they come up while we're chatting, please feel free to pop them in and we'll get to them at our allotted question time. So before we begin, I just wanted to do an acknowledgement of country. So the University of Melbourne acknowledges the traditional owners of the unceded land on which we work, learn and live. For us in the Parkville campus, it is the Wurundjeri, Woi Wurrung and the Bunurong people. We pay respect to our elders past, present and future and acknowledge the importance of Indigenous knowledge in the Academy. So jumping right ahead, I would love to introduce you to our wonderful alumni, Chris, who is with us today. Instead of me introducing him, I will get him to introduce himself to you. So Chris, thank you so much for joining us. It would be great if you could just start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself, including what did you study and what are you currently doing for work?
Awesome. So I'm Chris. I live up here in Queensland now. I went to Melbourne Uni a couple of years ago, probably 5, 6 years ago. When I was there, I did the Bachelor of Science with Chemistry, and then from there did the Masters of Engineering with Chemical Engineering, as you can see on the screen. During that time, I did an internship with two companies. So I did the university internship program for the Chemical Engineering cohort with Qenos, doing process safety, and I did a self-sourced one over summer with Viva Energy, who run the oil refinery down near Geelong, as a APC intern. Since finishing uni, first year out, got a grad program job with Orica, and I work here as a chemical engineer here now up in Queensland on an ammonium nitrate plant and cyanide.
Amazing. That sounds very technical for those of us who are not in the engineering industry. You mentioned there that you had two internships. So one was sourced through the university and one you self-sourced. So maybe could you tell us a little bit about the your first internship, which you said was sourced through the university and how you went about that?
Oh, it was the other way around, but they were very
Yes.
close together.
Yes, whichever one.
So the first one I had was the self-sourced one through just online application stuff. So typically around February of each year, companies start putting out their internship applications for people to peruse and apply to. So I was lucky enough to get the opportunity with Viva in August of that year to spend the summer at their refinery as a chemical engineering intern. And it was really good for the exposure to a big site and learning about what being an engineer is. It also really helped my studies in final year, having that extra real world experience. And it really does make a big difference, even in your studies before you graduate.
Yeah, amazing. And so with that being self-sourced, you said that you found that online. What did the application entail? Was it just a CV and cover letter? Did you have to do any group interviews or what was that process?
So the typical, that one specifically, we did CV cover letter, is pretty normal for online applications. And then it was just psychometric testing. So it's like an online quiz questions they do. They use it to try and assess your abilities.
Yeah.
From there, typically you do either these days it's an online video recording. So they'll ask you a question, you do record an answer in 3 minutes. Sometimes it's a phone. It depends on the company, how big they are. And then from there, you do an in-person interview or an in-person assessment center, depending on the size of the company. So you might come in like a group interview or an individual interview. They might combine it on the same day. And then from there, you'll find out whether you're successful or not.
Yeah,
And if you progress for each
amazing.
stage, you get yeses or nos along the path.
Yeah, wonderful. And how did that process, obviously being a self-sourced internship, how did that differ from the internship that you sourced through the university? Was that but via completing a unit at the university?
So the chemical engineering department at Melbourne Uni have a list of contacts in industry, and there's a subject called industry projects, I believe. I think it's 90028 or something, where they have a list of industry projects you can apply to work on as an intern during your semester. So it's a 12.5 point subject. So it's a one subject effectively through the uni. There's effectively an internship that the university sources for you.
Okay.
And then you apply for it based on WAM. Typically, you get something. I think the electrical department have a similar one just called Internships, and I think they have a list you can source from, but I'm not sure on that. But it's worth looking into those university sourced ones since it takes all the effort off you to actually go and find it.
Yeah, and so you mentioned that the university source it for you, but did you still have to prepare for your applications, or how did
No.
that work? You said it was based on WAM.
So the way it works, the way it worked for me was they have a list of all the ones they've got for that semester.
Yep.
And basically, if you're taking the subject, you just say, hey, these are my top five.
Yep.
And they give you whatever they can give you. So there's no application process. The university kind of vouches for you, and everyone
Yeah,
who,
okay.
all the industry partners kind of get you for free. So you don't get paid for it, but you get the university subject for it.
Yeah,
That's
amazing.
probably the best university fees I've ever spent is them sourcing me an internship.
Wonderful. And if we just jump back to your self-sourced interview, how did you prepare, self-sourced internship, sorry, how did you prepare for the interview side of things? Obviously, a lot of our students may not have interviewed for internships before, or it may be the first time they're doing that. So how did you prepare? Did you talk to your colleagues at university? How did you prepare for that?
I had a mentor through the STEM industry mentoring program, which Melbourne Uni also runs, coincidentally, who helped me prepare for that as well. Then also just going to different questions online, what are the typical questions they ask you, and then having a bank of scenarios you can pull from for their STAR approach. Lots of companies love to use STAR, which is situation, task, action, result, as their interview structure, and being able to have specific ideas you want to pull into those depending on the question really helps you just come into the interview prepared like you would an exam or a test.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. And we also, for the students who are online, we do have all of our careers and employability resources where we do have a mock assessment tool, your CV upload resume as well as our career advising appointment. So, Chris, did you use, you briefly touched on your STEM industry mentoring program. Did you use any other of the University of Melbourne's career resources while you were preparing?
I don't believe I did. I pretty much just did mock interviews with my mentor because
Yeah,
she was working
amazing.
for a similar-ish company, and I figured that was
Yeah.
the best way to go.
Yeah, amazing. And that is a really great point from Chris. We do have our wonderful mentoring programs that are available to you. And being able to practice with someone who is an experienced professional can be wonderful. So Chris, you talked about how you're now at Orica, if I'm saying that correctly. How did your internship experiences at Viva Energy and at Qenos, how did they influence your career path and where you are today?
So it's probably got two parts to it with regards to interviewing for grad programs. Um, Having gone through the internship interview process is quite good preparation for that. Think of it as like a trial year. It was obviously interns of the year before. Being very familiar with psychometric testing, assessment centers, one-on-one interviews is very good. And then when you go to that graduate year, you can hit the ground running, knowing what to expect. The process is basically identical.
Mm,
Um, the other advantage is having those internships of experience really sets you apart at the graduate level. So quite often you get people coming in with all kinds of grades, but having an internship is what makes a difference. And having an internship is better, I would say, is better than having the best grades possible.
yeah,
Having that
that's
real
really
world
good to know.
experience, having those extra 6 months of experience does make a big difference because it shows you know what you're getting into and you're not going to bail out the first sign of trouble.
And so, if we go back to your first internship, before you had experience, see, a lot of our students are in the space where they haven't done an internship yet. They might have only worked part-time, or maybe they haven't worked part-time yet. What suggestions or advice do you have for our students who are in that space and maybe preparing their CV, with that limited
Mm.
experience?
So the best thing to say is try and get some kind of casual or part-time job to show that you can handle the commitment and the
Mhm.
time and understand there is a level of responsibility. And also give you some practice with interviewing and dealing with people in a professional workspace. The second thing I would say you got to persevere. You got to be a bit resilient with the process because it can be quite soul crushing to have to apply. Spend 10 hours a week looking for internships to apply for it, and it can take multiple months to get anything. And
Mm,
just accepting that the process can take a while. You've just got to persist with it. And really taking it. One of my university lecturers in the chemical engineering department said, treat it like a subject. So 10,
mm.
10 hours a week until you get something is kind of what you have to look at doing, like a fifth subject. And it's
Yeah,
probably
wow.
the most important subject you'll do at uni.
Yeah, and that's a great point that Chris makes. You will apply for a lot of internships or grad programs that you may not get, and that's okay, but because every application that you do builds your experience, as Chris said, the more that you apply, the better you get at it. And you also learn where you would like to work and what you might want to do. So, on that, Chris, with your lecturer saying that it is a subject, I note that your Viva Energy, that was over the summer, so you weren't studying at the time that you did that
No.
internship. But your other internship, were you participating in other units at the time that you were completing that?
Sorry, announcement.
Mm.
So for the first internship it was over summer, full time, 40 hours a week,
Yep.
and was paid, which was nice. And then the university sourced one was in conjunction with two other subjects over that first semester.
And so, how did you balance your academic responsibilities while also participating in an internship?
Well, the advantage was that it was the first semester of COVID, so
Oh,
I did it all
okay.
from home, which
Yep.
helped. The reality is you probably need to accept a little bit of a hit in the academics because the internship matters a lot more, if I'm
Yep.
being realistic. Um,
Yep.
as long as you maintain a H2 average in your grades, you'll be fine.
Yep.
But getting that extra internship experience and making a good impression, especially if you want to work at the company post that industry project or post that university internship, is much more important and probably more valuable.
Yeah, so I guess it's also just about like planning ahead and balancing your workload at your internship versus your workload at university. So Chris makes a great point. Doing an internship while you're studying can be a lot on your schedule, but if you plan ahead and make sure that you know what you have going on, then you can definitely successfully manage both. So I will just ask you one final question, Chris, before we jump over to our student questions. So, as I mentioned, a lot of our students who are participating today might be applying for internships, might be starting to apply for grad roles. What is your biggest piece of advice that you would give to our current students who are seeking internships, particularly in terms for making the most of the experience? You've touched on that a little bit and how important you think it is,
Mm.
but what's your biggest piece of advice that you would give our students?
With regards to applications, be willing to learn from the failures.
Mm,
And if you get an offer, always say yes. And if you don't like the offer, keep applying.
mm.
If you get a grad role, the most important thing in your final year is to get a grad role in the industry. As long as you have one, you're swimming pretty good. If you get a second and you can weigh up the options, even better. But you don't want to get to the end of that final year and not have anything. I've seen people do that when they want something in particular. That's probably my biggest piece of advice is that if you get a contract, sign it, and you can always rescind it later.
Yeah, amazing. And I think Chris touches on a really good point there is that especially when you are starting out doing an internship or a graduate role, any experience is great experience, as Chris has mentioned. So it might not be exactly what you were hoping for in an internship or a grad role, but getting that experience, as Chris mentioned, just in a professional work environment can really help set you up for success later down in your career path. So thank you so much for that, Chris. That is the end of our formal questions for today. So if any of our students who are online, if you have questions that you would like to ask Chris, he is one of our Ask Alumni mentors. So he is quite used to answering questions from our students. And obviously, as you can see, he has a lot of experience in the engineering industry. So we'd love to hear from our students online for questions. So we've just had one that's come through, Chris, for you that says, how important was networking in your success to securing an internship? Did you have any networking strategies or learnings that you could share?
Um, for internship, it was somewhat useful, mainly using the network to help you prepare for interviews and prepare for that kind of application process. I didn't know anyone in the company that I applied for. I didn't find any success doing that, but in my grad role, I knew someone in Orica who helped me prepare the applications and kind of told me what they look for generally, which is obviously a big help to try and set you apart. So even just reaching
Yeah.
out to people, so I know the Ask Alumni page will let you search by company, which is convenient. If you search for like companies you're interested in or applying for, you can see who works there and try and get the feedback on what that company would look for or would look highly upon in an application. Would
Yeah,
my advice.
amazing. And Chris, when you were a student, did you find that your university colleagues, so that your friends that you're completing your degree with, you were all kind of going through it at the same time. Did you leverage or support each other through that experience?
Always. So we had a group of people. You're all applying to the same internships and grad programs. You might as well you take turns being the sacrificial lamb to go through first and to write the questions down. We definitely did that, so the other people can be ultra prepared for the application process. And you work together. You look at what you're doing and try and help each other out. That'll help you a lot more than trying to go it alone.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And we've just had another question come through from one of our students that says, what would you recommend, what would you recommend to do during the internship to make the most of the experience?
Ask why a lot.
Mm,
As a fresh intern or grad, you're kind of treated like a baby because you've got your degree. It's kind of like a 101 course. There's a lot still to learn. Just getting exposed, getting stuck in, saying yes to doing things, and asking why. Why do you do things a certain way? Why do things happen like this? No one expects you to know everything. We kind of expect you to ask why and to fail. Failing is kind of the accepted part of being a graduate or an intern. It's not like at uni where if you fail, you have to resit the subject.
mm.
They'll keep helping you push through.
Yeah, amazing. That's really great advice, Chris. I think always asking questions and that great tagline, ask why, because you are there to learn. They do not expect the world from you, especially when you're an intern or a grad. That's why they're called internship and graduate roles. You are not expected to go in with 10 years experience because you're just not going to have the 10 years experience. So I think that's great advice from Chris there. We've had another question come through here saying, "Hi, Chris, thanks for taking the time to do this. I'm following the same pathway as you, currently in my second year of my Bachelor of Science in Chemical Systems. A lot of internships suggest applying in the penultimate year of studies. Would that mean it's appropriate to apply in second year of the bachelor's degree or second last year of the master's degree?"
So, with regards to your question, technically, because of the 3+2 model, it's the first year of the master's, so the second year before you graduate. However, I did know people who got internships in their Bachelor of Science as a chemical engineer. I wouldn't say don't apply just
Mm,
because you don't hit the penultimate year requirement, especially at smaller companies. Bigger
mm.
companies might struggle, but smaller, more loose companies, you can sometimes get in as a Bachelor of Science graduate or intern just doing that degree. And there's no shame in applying. They can always say no.
And I think that's a great point from Chris there. Like we mentioned before, even doing applications can be really helpful to your success later on down the line. So if you do find yourself having the capacity or ability to participate in internships while you're still in your bachelor's, then we would definitely encourage applying. I do know that some companies are quite strict of when it's your penultimate year, so you will just have to have a look at their eligibility requirements and just be aware that if you do apply and you don't technically meet their eligibility requirements, that they might not look at your application. So that's just something to note as well. We have had a question from one of our students saying, "Is there any links for internships to apply right now?" I'm not sure that you'll be able to answer that in a broad
Orica
sense.
don't take interns. The graduate program ties up tomorrow, the applications for that, but Orica doesn't take interns officially.
Yeah, and
Um,
Kim, one of our colleagues, has just posted the link to our Unimail Careers online portal, which shows currently available internships that we're aware of at the university. And it's also a really good idea, as Kim's mentioned there, to check out your faculty newsletter as well. I think, as Chris mentioned, there does tend to be a timeline when it comes to internships. For some companies, they might apply earlier in the year. Some do it later in the year, so it is just going through and doing that research. Chris, when you did your internship through the university, the one that was sourced,
hmm.
did that have to be in a particular semester? Did you have to be a did you have to have completed a certain amount of credit points?
Yeah. So for the chemical engineers here, you can take the industry project subject second in your penultimate year second semester or your final year first semester or second semester, I think. Um, Basically they want you to be around that second to last year of experience in your degree. At the end of the day, they are vouching for your abilities, so they want you to be somewhat good.
Yeah.
But with regards to the subject. It's both semesters. I believe you could also take it over summer semester, but I don't know why you would do that when you could try and source your own and double up. I suppose if you need the subject space, but there are basically you could take the industry project subject in all semesters and summer semester. So there's lots of flexibility there if you want to do it that way.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. So I think we've come to the end of the questions from students. We do have a little bit more time with Chris, so I do encourage if anyone has any more questions to please pop them in the chat because he is here to hear from you. And we can take you through those questions. I will just touch on a few of our careers and employability resources that Chris may have used throughout his time or some of our other alumni may have used. So as we mentioned, Chris is actually one of our Ask Alumni mentors. So Ask Alumni is available to all of our UniMelb students and it connects you with graduates from all around the world. It can help you explore potential career paths and get insights into organizational culture. Through one conversation at a time. So you can search Chris on Ask Alumni and bug him post this session with any questions that you may have. So that is a great way to connect with people who are within the industry that you're looking to get into. We've got a couple more questions that have come through, Chris. So do you have any advice for commerce students? I am pursuing actuarial science major, so I'm not really sure if that's in your realm of expertise, Chris.
Let's see what I know about that. No, don't know anything about that one. Sorry.
That's okay. So, to our student who did ask that for the advice for commerce students, we did have a Ask Alumni FBE session last week. There is a recording and slides available. Please feel free to email me, and I can send you those resources from that. We do have a couple more that have come through for you, Chris. So, got one here that says, does first year undergrad stand on any chance in securing an internship?
The first year, I would say probably not unless you know someone in the company.
Mm-hmm.
I would say you either focus on the networking side of it and getting to know someone who can help you secure it through non-standard channels, or you focus more on the part-time and volunteer type work to build out the resume for second and third year is what I would recommend.
Yeah, amazing.
You got two actionals there you can try and go down.
Yeah, and I think Chris touched on a really important point there. In your first year, obviously, you're in your first year, so trying to build on your networking skills and just have a think about where you are in your career and where you might want to go is really important. We do have a lot of very keen first year students, Chris, who would love to participate in internships. I'm sure you remember the feeling. So we have another question here that says, thanks for your generous sharing. Did you do any voluntary work to make experience while waiting for a suitable internship? As we know, interns and paid part-times are sometimes hard to get, so students go to voluntary work to gain experience. Do you have any suggestions in this area?
Yes, so the university does a couple of volunteering things that are great for communication skills, which they always love to hear about at application stages of things. So I did one through Into Science through the science faculty, where they basically have you go tutor kids at nearby schools. That's great for being able to bring up in interviews. They love the volunteering aspect. They love hearing that you can communicate with different groups of people, all that kinds of stuff. I also did Endeavour, which I believe is the final year project at Melbourne Uni that you can volunteer to help run the showcase for, which is a lot of fun. You get some free food and see some cool projects, and it goes on the resume. Things like that through the uni are always great to volunteer with because it's a bit easier than having to do external stuff. Then doing external stuff is always possible as well.
Yeah, amazing. That's really great advice. Always leverage what you have available for you at the university. We've had another question come through that says, do you have any advice on the types of answers companies want for their behavioural tests? So I will just quickly note with that one is that we do have in our Employ Me online tool that you can use to practice interview, take career assessments and aptitude tests for Employ Me. But behavioural questions in interviews are something that is becoming a lot more popular in our interviews. So I think Chris touched on before having scenarios, like a pool of scenarios that you can use to go back to within that STAR method. So maybe, Chris, is there any particular behavioral questions you noticed during your interviews that were like a reoccurring theme at all?
Um, it's always about how you work in a team, how you work with other people. It's less so about your technical skills, because you're assumed to be somewhat technically proficient, but you're all at about the same level when it comes to industry. It's more about how you work in a team, how you take failure, how you deal with people. Because we can teach someone to be a better technical engineer, we can't really teach you how to be a better person, which is where all the volunteering comes into it and getting interaction with people in different environments. That's what we love to see.
And I think that's a great point from Chris there. I think we touched on it before that when you are an intern or you're a grad, they are not expecting you to know all the answers. And as he said, they can teach you how to do the job. But when it comes to working in a team and being able to work in a collaborative environment, they can't teach you that. So practicing those skills throughout university, even in your group assignments and group subjects, is a really great way to do. We've just had another question pop up, Chris, from a student who is about to finish up their Bachelor of Science in semester one next year, majoring in ecology. Is it too late to apply for an internship? Is it bad if I were to start one right after the degree is finished?
That's not bad. You can do an internship at any point during the degree. Sometimes it's a great way to get that first impression at a company and then leverage it into some sort of grad role. I've seen plenty of people do that out of uni, go through an internship after the final semester, or in your case, coming up, and then use that to leverage into a grad role later on. So that's definitely a viable path.
Yeah,
It's something you probably want to get
amazing.
onto as soon as possible.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, well, that comes to the end of our question time. I'm conscious that we have 4 minutes left, and Chris is a very busy engineer who has a meeting to get to after. So, as I touched on previously, in front of you on the screen are our careers and employability resources that are available to all of our University of Melbourne students. So, a couple of you asked questions about the aptitude tests and behavioural questions, so you can use our Employ Me resource for that. We also have our Smart Resume tool, which uses AI to provide real-time insights and feedback on your resume. Careers Online, which was posted in the chat before, which does have a jobs board available to you, and the LMS community, which gives you access to free online learning modules. But as always, and of course, Ask Alumni is what we highly recommend. If you did finish today's session and realize that you had a couple more questions for Chris, you can always join to Ask Alumni and search him in Ask Alumni. Or if there was an area in which you were more interested in, you can always search via different employers or industries as well. On top of our online resources, we also have our career advice appointments available to you through the university. So these are in the form of careers drop-in / Zoom-in sessions, which are designed for quick career queries with a career advisor. We have our one-on-one careers appointments, which just help you sit down with one of our senior careers advisors and help you plan and develop your career path. And then you can always submit a careers question using our online inquiry form if you did just have a quick question that you wanted to touch. So we just had another question from a student saying, does every faculty provide the internship course? I'm currently studying in the Faculty of Architecture. So that would be a question to direct to your faculty. Chris is obviously from the FEIT faculty, so he's not able to touch on that. Jump online and have a look at your faculty information, so we can provide more advice on that one there for you. But that is the end of our presentation today. So Chris, thank you again so much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to our students and talk to us today. And we will let you get on to your meeting.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Chris.